I am Henry, 68 years old, a former carpenter from Chicago. I still remember the exact moment when my life shattered. My son Michael stood at the door, holding a lottery check, his face twisted with greed. "You won't see a cent of my money," he spat. "You have 2 days to get out of my apartment." The words cut deeper than any saw I had ever handled in my 40 years of woodworking. Before I share what Michael didn't know, tell me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you believe greed can blind people to what truly matters in life. Growing up in the south side of Chicago, I learned the value of hard work early on. My father was also a carpenter, and he taught me everything I knew about woodworking. I spent 40 years building and creating with my hands. Every callus, every scar, tells a story of providing for my family. Sarah. My wife was the light of my life. We met at a neighborhood barbecue when we were both 22. Her laugh could fill a room, and her kindness knew no bounds. We married young and had Michael when we were 32. Those were the happiest days of my life, working hard during the day and coming home to Sarah and our boy. When Michael was born, I carved him a wooden rocking horse. It took me 3 months of working every evening after my regular job. Sarah would bring me coffee in the garage where I worked, and we would talk about our dreams for our son. We wanted him to go to college, to have opportunities we never had. But life had other plans. When Michael turned 21, Sarah was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. Within 6 months, she was gone. The medical bills piled up, but I paid every cent. I would have sold my soul to save her, but all the money in the world couldn't keep her with us. After Sarah passed, it was just Michael and me. I did everything I could to support him through his grief while managing my own. I worked overtime to make sure he could stay in college. I skipped meals, drove an old truck that broke down every other week, and wore the same clothes for years. Nothing was too much sacrifice if it meant giving my son a better future. In those early years after Sarah's death, Michael and I were close. I taught him everything I knew about woodworking. We would spend weekends in the garage building shelves or fixing furniture. I showed him how to fish at Lake Michigan, just like my father had taught me. We fixed his old bicycle together when it broke down, laughing at our grease-covered hands. But something changed when Michael went away to college. His visits home became less frequent. Our phone calls grew shorter. He studied finance and started to see the world differently. He began to talk about investment portfolios and stock options, things I knew nothing about. I was proud of him, but I could feel him slipping away from someone who worked with his hands. After graduation, Michael landed a job at an investment firm in downtown Chicago. He wore expensive suits and talked about clients and deals. I tried to understand his world, asked questions about his work, but he would just say, "It's complicated, Dad," with a hint of condescension in his voice. Then the 2008 financial crisis hit. Construction projects dried up. At 58 years old, I found myself struggling to find steady work. I dipped into my savings to keep afloat, hoping things would turn around. But they didn't. The final blow came when I fell from a ladder at a rare job site I had managed to secure. My back was never the same after that. The doctor said I couldn't do heavy lifting anymore, a death sentence for a carpenter. My disability payments barely covered food, let alone rent. When I could no longer make rent, I swallowed my pride and called Michael. He had a good job and a nice apartment in downtown Chicago. He sighed deeply when I asked if I could stay with him temporarily, just until I got back on my feet. "Fine, Dad," he said after a long pause. "But just until you figure something out." I packed what little I had left and moved into my son's apartment. From the beginning, he made it clear this arrangement was temporary. The word hung between us like an axe waiting to fall. Michael's apartment was everything mine wasn't. Sleek, modern, expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of Lake Michigan. The furniture looked like it belonged in a magazine, all clean lines and sharp angles. There wasn't a hint of warmth or personality anywhere. My old wooden chest, handmade by my father, looked out of place against the stark white walls. Michael frowned when he saw it. "Do you really need to keep that old thing?" he asked. "It doesn't match the aesthetic." I explained it was one of the few things I had from my father, but I could tell from his expression that he didn't care. It was just another old, ugly item cluttering his perfect space. Michael established strict rules from day one. I couldn't use the kitchen after 8 p.m. The television volume had to be kept low. I wasn't allowed to have visitors without his permission. The small storage closet was off limits because it contained his valuable collectibles. I felt like a guest who had overstayed his welcome from the very first night. There was no spare bedroom in the 2-bedroom apartment. The second bedroom was Michael's home office, where he would often work late into the night. I slept on the sofa in the living room, my belongings stored in 2 cardboard boxes tucked discreetly behind it. Every morning I would fold my blanket and place it out of sight, erasing any evidence of my existence before Michael woke up. "Do you know how much the rent is for this place?" Michael would ask, whenever I accidentally left a dish in the sink or a magazine on the coffee table. "I'm not charging you anything to stay here. The least you could do is keep it clean." I tried to contribute in the ways I could. I cooked dinner when Michael was home using recipes Sarah had taught me. I fixed leaky faucets and loose cabinet doors. I even built a bookshelf for his growing collection of financial books. But nothing seemed to please him. "I didn't ask you to do that," he would say dismissively whenever I completed a home improvement project. "Now it doesn't match the rest of the decor." Michael was rarely home anyway. He worked late most evenings and spent weekends with his friends or his girlfriend, Amanda. She was a marketing executive who wore clothes that probably cost more than all my possessions combined. She was polite enough when we met, but I could tell she saw me as a burden, an unfortunate circumstance her boyfriend had to deal with. Once I overheard them talking in the kitchen. "How much longer is he staying?" Amanda whispered. "I don't know," Michael replied. "I can't just throw him out on the street." "Well, you can't keep him forever. Have you looked into senior housing?" I pretended not to hear, but their words stung. I had become a problem to be solved, not a father to be cared for. The loneliness was the hardest part. I spent my days alone in the apartment, trying to make myself invisible. I missed having friends over for a beer, watching sports at a volume I could actually hear, cooking meals that filled the home with familiar smells. After 2 months of this arrangement, I decided I needed to find something to occupy my time and hopefully earn some money. I saw a help wanted sign at a small furniture repair shop about 10 blocks from Michael's apartment. The owner, Jack, was looking for someone with woodworking experience to help restore antique furniture. "I can't pay much," Jack warned when I inquired about the position. "And with your back, you shouldn't be lifting heavy pieces." "I don't need much," I told him, "and I can still work with my hands even if heavy lifting is out." Jack hired me part-time, 3 days a week. The pay was minimal, but it gave me purpose and a place to go. I didn't tell Michael about the job immediately. I wanted something that was just mine, a small piece of independence in a life that had become dependent on my son's charity. When I finally mentioned it to Michael, he seemed relieved. "Good," he said, not looking up from his phone. "Maybe you can start saving up for your own place." His words confirmed what I already knew. I was an unwelcome guest in my son's life. Every Friday, rain or shine, I would walk to the corner store and buy a single lottery ticket. It was a tradition I had maintained since my working days. Sarah and I used to joke that our retirement plan was hitting the jackpot. After she passed, I continued the ritual as a way to keep her memory alive. One Friday, Michael caught me slipping the lottery ticket into my wallet as I returned from the store. "You're still wasting money on those useless tickets?" he asked, shaking his head. "No wonder you're broke." "It's just $2 a week," I explained. "It gives me something to look forward to." Michael scoffed. "The odds of winning are astronomically against you. You might as well throw your money in the lake." "Maybe," I conceded. "But sometimes hope is worth the investment." "That's the kind of thinking that keeps poor people poor," he replied coldly. I offered to buy him a ticket too, thinking it might be a small way for us to bond. Michael looked at me like I had suggested he burn his money. "No thanks," he said. "I invest my money in things with actual returns." That Friday was different, though. It was approaching my 70th birthday, and I had been feeling particularly reflective. At the store, I decided to splurge on a Powerball ticket instead of my usual pick 3. I selected numbers that held special meaning: 7 for Sarah's birth month, 16 for our wedding day, 21 for Michael's birthday, 32 for the age we were when Michael was born, 44 for the number of years I would have been married to Sarah, and 11 because it was Sarah's lucky number. When I returned to the apartment, I placed the ticket in a small wooden box I had carved shortly after Sarah's death. It was the last gift she had given me, a piece of cherry wood she had found at an estate sale. "Make something beautiful," she had said. I made the box to hold her wedding ring and the few photographs I had managed to keep through the hard times. As I placed the lottery ticket inside the box, an idea struck me. What if I registered the ticket in Michael's name? If by some miracle we won, it would be his. I could give my son the financial security I had never been able to provide. It would be my final gift to him: freedom from the relentless pursuit of money that seemed to consume him. The next day, while Michael was at work, I took a bus to the state lottery office. The clerk looked surprised when I explained what I wanted to do. "You want to register this ticket under someone else's name?" she asked, peering at me over her glasses. "Yes," I said. "My son, Michael Lawson. It's going to be a surprise." She explained the process. If the ticket won, Michael would be contacted as the official winner. His name would appear on any publicity materials. He would be responsible for claiming the prize and paying the taxes. I would have no legal claim to any of the winnings. "Are you sure about this?" the clerk asked. "Most people want to keep their tickets in their own name." "I'm sure," I replied. "It's for my son." I filled out the necessary paperwork, providing Michael's full name, address, and social security number. I had memorized it years ago when I helped him apply for college scholarships. The clerk processed the documents and handed me back the ticket. "Good luck," she said with a smile. "That's a lovely gift for your son." I returned to the apartment and carefully placed the ticket back in the wooden box. Next to it, I wrote a note explaining my intention to give Michael the ticket as a birthday gift. If it won nothing, as was most likely, at least he would understand the gesture. If by some miracle it won something, even a small amount, perhaps it would help him see that his old man wasn't completely foolish. I hid the box in my duffel bag beneath some clothes. It wasn't that I didn't trust Michael, but the gift wouldn't be special if he found it beforehand. The following Wednesday evening, Michael was out on a date with Amanda. I was alone in the apartment watching an old western on television, with the volume turned low as per Michael's rules. During a commercial break, they showed the Powerball drawing. I wasn't really paying attention until the announcer read the first number 7. I sat up a little straighter. Then came 16. My heart began to beat faster. 21. I reached for the wooden box where I kept the ticket. 32. My hands were shaking now. 44. I could barely breathe. And the final number, the Powerball 11. I stared at the ticket in my hand, comparing the numbers again and again. They matched. All 6 numbers matched. The room seemed to spin around me. This couldn't be happening. People like me didn't win the lottery. That was for lucky folks in the suburbs or rich neighborhoods, not former carpenters, sleeping on their sons' couches. The announcer's voice broke through my shock. Tonight's Powerball jackpot of $37 million will go to one lucky winner. The ticket was purchased in Chicago, Illinois. $37 million. The amount was incomprehensible. With money like that, Michael would never have to worry again. He could quit his job, buy a house, travel the world. All the things he seemed to value. I sat in silence for a long time, the winning ticket clutched in my hand. I needed to tell Michael, but I wanted to do it right. This would change everything between us. Maybe it would bring back the son who used to fish with me at Lake Michigan, who used to work alongside me in the garage. I decided to wait until morning. Michael often came home late from his dates with Amanda, and I wanted him to be clear-headed when I gave him the news. I tucked the ticket back into the wooden box and tried to sleep, but my mind raced with possibilities. The next morning, Michael was eating breakfast and scrolling through news on his phone when he suddenly looked up. "Someone in Chicago won the Powerball last night," he said, seemingly talking to himself more than to me. $37 million. Can you imagine? That's quite a sum, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Michael shook his head. Another lucky bastard. See, Dad, that's why those tickets are a waste of money. The chances of that being you are basically 0. I started to say something, but Michael was already standing up, depositing his cereal bowl in the sink. "I've got a meeting. Don't wait up tonight. I'm going out with the guys after work." He grabbed his jacket and was gone before I could respond. I sat at the kitchen counter, the words I wanted to say stuck in my throat. I had planned to tell him right then to hand him the wooden box with the ticket inside. But something held me back. Maybe it was the dismissive way he had talked about lottery winners. Or maybe it was a strange premonition that I should wait. I decided to wait a few more days. Michael's birthday was coming up in 3 weeks. Perhaps that would be the perfect time to give him the gift, a birthday he would never forget. Later that day, while Michael was at work, I received a call from the state lottery office. The woman on the phone introduced herself as Patricia Wilson, the Director of Winner Relations. "Mr. Lawson?" she asked. "Yes, this is Henry Lawson," I replied. There was a pause. "I'm looking for Michael Lawson," she said. "Our records show he's the owner of a winning Powerball ticket from last night's drawing." My heart raced. "Michael is my son," I explained. "I bought the ticket and registered it in his name as a gift. He doesn't know yet." Patricia seemed surprised. "I see. Well, I'm calling to inform the winner that they need to come to our office to begin the claim process. There's quite a bit of paperwork involved with a prize of this size." "I understand," I said. "I'm planning to tell him soon. Could you possibly wait before contacting him directly? I'd like it to be a surprise." After some discussion, Patricia agreed to give me a few days to break the news to Michael myself. She left her direct number and asked me to have Michael call her once he knew. I hung up, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. The reality of the situation was starting to sink in. My son was now a multimillionaire, and he didn't even know it yet. The decision about when to tell Michael was taken out of my hands 3 days later. I was preparing dinner, a simple pasta dish with Sarah's special sauce recipe, when Michael came home unexpectedly early. His face was flushed, his eyes wild. In his hand he clutched a large ceremonial check with his name on it, and the amount $37,000. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice shaking with emotion. "The lottery office called me. They said I won. They said you registered a ticket in my name." I wiped my hands on a dish towel, trying to remain calm. "That's right, Michael. I bought the ticket for your birthday. I was going to surprise you." "My birthday isn't for 3 weeks," he said, suspicion clouding his features. "I know. I was going to wait, but..." "But what?" he interrupted. "But you wanted to make sure your name was attached to my money. Is that it?" I was stunned by the accusation. "No, Michael. The money is yours. I registered it solely in your name. I have no claim to it." Michael paced the small kitchen, running his free hand through his hair. "I don't believe this. After all these years of lecturing me about saving and hard work, you've been gambling. And now you hit it big and think you're going to control my life with this money." "It's not like that at all," I protested. "It was a gift. I wanted you to have financial security, to be free from worry." "Free from worry?" Michael's laugh was harsh. "Like you've been so worried about me all these years. Living in my apartment, eating my food, being a constant reminder of where I came from." Each word was like a physical blow. I had no idea my son harbored such resentment. "Michael, I'm your father. I've only ever wanted what's best for you." "What's best for me?" His voice rose. "You think sleeping on the couch in my living room is what's best for me? Having my colleagues wonder why my father can't support himself? Having Amanda ask when you're finally going to move out?" I stood in silence, absorbing his anger. I had known things weren't perfect between us, but I had no idea the depth of his shame and resentment. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I finally said. "But the ticket is yours. I registered it in your name because I wanted you to have it. There are no strings attached." Michael looked at me, his expression hardening. "You're right about one thing. The money is mine, and I don't want you anywhere near it." He took a step toward me, his voice low and dangerous now. "You won't see a cent of my money. I want you out of my apartment. You have 2 days to pack your things and leave." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Michael, please, let's talk about this when you've calmed down." "There's nothing to talk about," he said coldly. "I've put up with you long enough. Now that I have the means, I don't need the burden anymore." "Burden?" The word caught in my throat. "Is that what I am to you? A burden? What else would you call it?" Michael shot back. "You can't work, you can't pay rent, you just take and take. Well, I'm done giving." He turned to leave the kitchen, then paused in the doorway. 2 days, Dad. Then I want you gone." The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone with the half-prepared dinner. The sauce I had been so carefully stirring was now burning on the stove, filling the kitchen with the smell of scorched tomatoes. Like my relationship with my son, it was beyond saving. I turned off the burner and sank into a chair at the small kitchen table. The weight of Michael's words pressed down on me like a physical force. My own son had just thrown me away, discarded me like an old piece of furniture that no longer matched his decor. I had given him everything: the ticket, the money, my love, and in return he had shown me exactly what I was worth to him. Nothing. The next morning, Michael left early without saying a word to me. I sat at the kitchen table staring at my hands. hands that had built houses, crafted furniture, and cradled my son when he was an infant. Now they felt useless, empty. I knew I had to leave. Michael's words had been clear, and his anger left no room for reconciliation. With a heavy heart, I began to pack my few belongings into my old duffel bag and a cardboard box. It didn't take long. My life had been reduced to the essentials during the hard times after my injury. I carefully wrapped the small wooden items I had kept from my days as a carpenter. A hand plane. My father had given me the small mallet I had used to teach Michael how to build his first birdhouse, a few chisels that still held their edge despite decades of use. These tools were more than possessions. They were extensions of who I was. The wooden box containing Sarah's ring went into my pocket. I left the lottery ticket on the kitchen counter with a simple note. "The money is yours. I never wanted anything but your happiness. Love, Dad." I didn't wait for Michael to come home. I couldn't bear to see the cold satisfaction in his eyes as I walked out the door. Instead, I called my old friend Frank, who had been my apprentice when we both worked for the same construction company 30 years ago. "Of course you can stay with me," Frank said without hesitation when I explained the situation. "For as long as you need." Frank lived in a small apartment in a working-class neighborhood on the west side of Chicago. It was a far cry from Michael's luxury high-rise, but there was warmth in the worn furniture and family photos that covered the walls. Frank's wife had passed away a few years before, and he seemed grateful for the company. "The couch pulls out into a bed," he said, showing me around. "It's not fancy, but it's clean." "It's perfect," I told him, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." The first few days at Frank's apartment were a blur of pain and disbelief. I kept expecting my phone to ring, for Michael to call and apologize to ask me to come back. But the call never came. I checked my phone constantly, but there were no missed calls, no text messages. I tried to keep busy helping Frank with small repairs around his apartment, cooking meals, anything to occupy my mind and hands. But the ache in my chest wouldn't go away. My own son had thrown me out like trash the moment he no longer needed me. Frank tried to console me. "He'll come around," he said one evening as we sat watching baseball on his old television. "Once the shock wears off, he'll realize what he's done." I appreciated Frank's kindness, but I knew better. I had seen the look in Michael's eyes. There had been no love there, no filial bond, only cold calculation and relief at finally being able to discard his burdensome father. About a week after I moved in with Frank, I ran into Amanda at a grocery store in the neighborhood. She looked surprised to see me filling a small basket with budget brand items. "Henry," she said, approaching me cautiously. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Hello, Amanda," I replied, trying to maintain my dignity. "How are you?" She glanced around as if worried someone might see her talking to me. "I'm fine. Michael said you moved out." "That's one way to put it," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Amanda had the grace to look uncomfortable. "He's changed since the money," she admitted in a low voice. "He quit his job the day after he found out. He bought a Ferrari. Can you believe it? A Ferrari in Chicago." I couldn't help but shake my head. Michael had always been frugal to the point of stinginess. The sudden wealth had clearly gone to his head. "He's looking at penthouses in the Gold Coast," Amanda continued, "and he's throwing money around like it's nothing. Last night he bought drinks for an entire bar full of strangers." I didn't know what to say. It seemed Michael was embracing his new wealth with reckless abandon. "I tried to tell him to slow down, to think about the future," she said, fiddling with the handle of her shopping basket. "But he wouldn't listen. He said he's been cautious his whole life, and now it's time to live." Before we parted ways, Amanda hesitated, then added, "He moved, by the way, to the Four Seasons Hotel until he finds a permanent place. He's been hosting parties almost every night." I thanked her for the information, though I wasn't sure what to do with it. It was clear Michael had no intention of reaching out to me. In the weeks that followed, I tried to rebuild my life. I found part-time work at a small woodworking shop owned by a craftsman named Paul, who specialized in restoring antique furniture. My back wouldn't allow me to do heavy lifting, but my skills with detailed work were still sharp. "You've got a real talent," Paul said after watching me repair the intricate inlay on an old writing desk. "Most younger workers don't have the patience for this kind of precision." Working with wood again brought me a sense of peace I hadn't felt since before my injury. The familiar smells of sawdust and varnish, the weight of quality tools in my hand, the satisfaction of seeing damaged pieces made whole again. These simple pleasures helped heal the wound left by Michael's rejection. One day, a young man named Jason came into the shop looking for work. He was in his early 20s, rough around the edges, with the look of someone who had faced hardships. Paul was hesitant to hire someone with no experience, but I saw something in the young man's eager eyes. "I could teach him," I offered. "Start him with the basics like my father did with me." Paul agreed to give Jason a trial period, and I became his unofficial mentor. Teaching came naturally to me, and Jason proved to be a quick learner. There was something deeply satisfying about passing on the knowledge that had been passed to me by my father and grandfather before him. Word spread, and soon other young people from the neighborhood began stopping by the shop, curious about woodworking. With Paul's permission, I started offering free lessons on Saturday mornings. Many of the kids came from difficult backgrounds, single-parent homes, poverty, brushes with the law. Working with their hands gave them a sense of accomplishment and pride. As my small group of students grew, I began to feel a sense of purpose again. The hole left by Michael's rejection was still there, but it wasn't the gaping wound it had once been. About 2 months after moving in with Frank, I received a call from a man who introduced himself as James Wilson, an attorney from the state lottery office. "Mr. Lawson, I'm calling about the Powerball ticket registered to Michael Lawson," he said. "There seems to be some confusion about the ownership." My heart sank. "There's no confusion," I replied. "I purchased the ticket and registered it in my son's name. It was a gift." "Yes, that's what our records show," Wilson confirmed. "But under state law, the person who physically purchases the ticket and registers it is considered the legal owner, regardless of whose name is on the registration." I was silent for a moment, processing this information. "Are you saying the ticket is legally mine?" "Technically, yes," Wilson replied. "If you wanted to claim the prize instead of your son, you would have legal grounds to do so." The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. After all Michael's accusations about me trying to get my hands on his money, it turned out the money could legally be mine all along. "I don't want to claim it," I said firmly. "I gave that ticket to my son as a gift. The money belongs to him." Wilson sounded surprised. "Are you certain the amount is substantial, and from what I understand your relationship with your son is strained?" "My relationship with my son is my business," I replied, perhaps more sharply than intended. "And yes, I'm certain. I won't go back on my word, even if he went back on his obligation as a son." After hanging up, I sat in Frank's small living room, contemplating the strange turn of events. I could take back the money if I wanted to. I could reclaim the fortune that had driven my son to discard me. For a brief, dark moment, I considered it. Not out of greed, but out of a desire to teach Michael a lesson about the consequences of his actions. But that wasn't who I was. I had given Michael the ticket as a gift with no strings attached. Taking it back would make me no better than him. A few days later, a small local newspaper ran a story about the free woodworking classes I was offering to neighborhood youth. The reporter had heard about the program from one of the parents and thought it made an interesting human interest piece. The article included a photograph of me helping a young girl sand down a small jewelry box she was making for her mother. "Former carpenter builds new life teaching youth traditional skills," the headline read. The article mentioned my decades of experience as a carpenter and how I was now passing those skills onto a new generation. It described the small workshop, the eager young students, and the pride on their faces when they completed their first projects. What the article didn't mention was my connection to the recent lottery winner, or the fact that I was sleeping on a friend's pull-out couch. Those details weren't relevant to the story the reporter wanted to tell, a story about second chances and finding purpose through service to others. I didn't think much about the article until about a week after it was published, when Frank mentioned he had seen Michael reading it at a coffee shop near his office. "He was staring at your picture for a long time," Frank reported. "He looked, I don't know, conflicted." I tried not to read too much into this information. Michael had made his choice. He had chosen wealth over family comfort, over obligation. One newspaper article wouldn't change that. But a small part of me hoped that seeing me in that context, teaching, giving back, finding joy in simple work, might remind Michael of the values I had tried to instill in him, the values that seemed to have been washed away in the flood of sudden wealth. 6 months passed. My life settled into a new rhythm. I moved out of Frank's apartment into a small studio I could afford with my earnings from the woodworking shop. It wasn't much, just one room with a kitchenette and bathroom. But it was mine. I decorated it with some of my own woodwork, a small table, a bookshelf, a rocking chair similar to the one I had built for Sarah decades ago. The woodworking classes expanded to 3 days a week. Paul let me use the shop after hours in exchange for helping with some of his more detailed restoration projects. I had 15 regular students, now ranging in age from 14 to 22. Watching them create with their hands, seeing their confidence grow with each completed project, brought me a joy I hadn't expected to find again. I still thought about Michael every day. I wondered what he was doing with his newfound wealth, whether it had brought him the happiness he seemed to think it would. I checked the local newspapers occasionally for mentions of him, but after the initial buzz about the lottery win, there was little news. Then one evening in early winter, as I was walking home from the shop, I ran into my former neighbor from Michael's building. She recognized me immediately and stopped to chat. "Henry, I haven't seen you in ages. How have you been?" I gave her the abbreviated version of my new life, not mentioning the circumstances of my departure from Michael's apartment. "And how's Michael?" she asked. "I haven't seen much of him since he moved out." "I'm not sure," I admitted. "We don't talk much these days." She looked surprised. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, especially with everything that's been happening." "What do you mean?" I asked, suddenly alert. She lowered her voice. "Well, I don't like to gossip, but it's been all over the local news. He's been having some troubles. Got arrested last month for driving under the influence. Crashed his fancy new car into the front of a convenience store. No one was hurt, thank goodness, but it was his second DUI in 3 months." My heart sank. "I didn't know. And there was that lawsuit from his former employers," she continued. "Something about breach of contract when he quit without notice. And those friends of his, always partying, making a scene. The doorman at his new building says there are complaints almost every night." I thanked her for the information and continued home, my mind racing. Michael was in trouble. Serious trouble. The money that was supposed to bring him freedom seemed to be doing the opposite. It was destroying him. That night, I sat in my small apartment, wondering what, if anything, I should do. Michael had made it clear he wanted nothing to do with me. Would reaching out now, after all this time, do any good? Or would he see it as an attempt to get my hands on his dwindling fortune? I was still wrestling with these questions when my phone rang at 11:30 that night. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Is this Henry Lawson?" a formal voice asked. "Yes, it is. This is Officer Jenkins from the Chicago Police Department. We have your son, Michael Lawson, in custody. He's asked us to contact you." I arrived at the police station just after midnight. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the worn linoleum floor. The desk sergeant directed me to a waiting area where Michael sat on a metal bench, his head in his hands. He looked terrible. His expensive clothes were rumpled and stained. His face was gaunt with dark circles under his eyes. His hair, usually meticulously styled, was disheveled. He didn't notice me at first, staring blankly at the floor. "Michael," I said softly. He looked up, and for a moment I saw a flash of the little boy who used to run to me with skinned knees seeking comfort. Then his expression clouded a mix of shame and defiance. "They're charging me with drunk and disorderly," he said without preamble. "I need someone to drive me home. Amanda wouldn't answer her phone." No hello, no how are you. No acknowledgement of the 6 months of silence, just a practical need for a ride. I signed the necessary paperwork, paid his bail, and led him out to my old truck, the same one I had been driving when he kicked me out. Michael looked at it with distaste, but climbed in without comment. We drove in silence for several minutes. The streets of Chicago were nearly empty, the late-night stillness broken only by the occasional passing car or the distant wail of a siren. "Where to?" I finally asked. "I don't know your new address." Michael gave me the name of a luxury apartment building in the Gold Coast neighborhood. Then he returned to staring out the window. As we approached the downtown area, he finally spoke. "Amanda left me." I glanced at him but said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "She said I've changed. Said I'm not the man she fell in love with." He laughed bitterly. "She stuck around long enough to enjoy the perks, though. Vacations, jewelry, that car she always wanted." I kept my eyes on the road, still not commenting. "Everyone wants something." Michael continued his words, slightly slurred from whatever he had been drinking earlier. "My so-called friends, the ones who never had the time for me before the money. They're always around now, always with ideas for how I should spend my cash." We stopped at a red light and I turned to look at him. "And have you been spending it?" Michael's laugh was hollow. "Oh, I've been spending it all right. Cars, clothes, parties, investments that my friends swore were sure things. Half of it's gone already." I couldn't hide my shock. Half? In 6 months? Turns out 37 million doesn't go as far as you'd think. Not when everyone has their hand out. The light turned green, and I focused back on the road. "And what about you, Michael? What have you been getting out of all this spending?" He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice was small, almost childlike. "Nothing. I've never been more miserable in my life." We arrived at his building, a gleaming high-rise, with a uniformed doorman who looked at Michael with barely concealed distaste. Clearly, this wasn't the first time he had arrived home in this condition. "Do you want to come up?" Michael asked, the invitation sounding more like an obligation than a genuine offer. "No," I replied. "I don't think that would be a good idea tonight. You need some sleep." Michael nodded, his relief evident. He opened the passenger door, but paused before getting out. "Why did you do it? Why did you put the ticket in my name?" The question caught me off guard. After everything that had happened, this was what he wanted to know. "Because you're my son," I said simply. "I wanted you to have a better life than I could give you." Michael stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the dim light of the truck cab. "And look how I repaid you." He got out of the truck before I could respond, slamming the door behind him. I watched as he stumbled slightly on his way to the entrance, the doorman moving to assist him with obvious reluctance. I drove back to my small apartment, my mind churning with thoughts of my son. The boy he had been, the man he had become, and the broken person I had just seen. The money that was supposed to be a blessing had become a curse. The freedom it promised had become a prison of excess and false friendships. The next day was Saturday. I went to the woodworking shop as usual, where my students were already waiting. Their eager faces and genuine enthusiasm for learning was a stark contrast to the emptiness I had seen in Michael's eyes. We worked on various projects. A young girl was finishing a picture frame for her grandmother. 2 teenage boys were collaborating on a set of chess pieces. A single mother was crafting a toy box for her toddler. The shop filled with the sounds of sawing, sanding, and occasional laughter. Around noon, the bell over the door jingled. I looked up, expecting to see Paul returning from his lunch break. Instead, Michael stood in the doorway, looking uncertain and out of place in his designer clothes. My students glanced curiously between us, sensing something significant in this unexpected visit. "Class, let's take a lunch break," I announced. "Be back in 30 minutes. They filed out, still sneaking glances at Michael as they passed. When we were alone, Michael looked around the shop, taking in the works in progress, the tools arranged neatly on pegboards, the fine layer of sawdust that covered every surface despite our best efforts to clean. "So this is where you've been," he said finally. "Part of the time," I replied. "I live not far from here. Small place, but it suits me." Michael nodded, running his finger along the edge of a partially completed bookshelf. "I saw the article about you teaching kids woodworking." "It's been good for me," I said. "Gives me purpose." Michael continued to wander around the shop, stopping to examine a small jewelry box one of my students had crafted. "I never thanked you for bailing me out last night." "You're welcome." He turned to face me, his expression pained. "Dad, I've made a mess of everything." I waited, giving him space to continue. "The money, it changed me. Or maybe it just revealed who I really am." He ran a hand through his hair. "Either way, I hate what I've become." "Money has a way of doing that," I said. "It amplifies what's already there, good or bad." Michael picked up a small wood plane, turning it over in his hands. "Remember when you taught me how to use one of these? I must have been, 9, I corrected. You made a small serving tray for your mother for Christmas." "She loved that tray," Michael said softly. "Used it every Sunday for breakfast in bed, even though it was wobbly and uneven. She treasured it because you made it with your hands and your heart." Michael set the plane down carefully. "I've forgotten a lot of the important things you taught me, Dad." "It's not too late to remember," I said. He looked at me, his eyes filled with regret. "I treated you terribly. Threw you out like you meant nothing to me. After everything you did for me, raising me alone, working those long hours, sacrificing so I could go to college." His voice broke. "I can't believe you still came to get me last night." "You're my son," I said simply. "That doesn't change based on your behavior or circumstances." Michael wiped at his eyes. "The lawyer from the lottery office called me. Told me that legally the ticket could have been yours, that you had the right to claim it yourself. I nodded. He called me too. But you didn't take it back even after what I did to you. It was a gift, I replied, no strings attached. Michael looked around the shop again, taking in my simple surroundings. You could have had houses, cars, travel, anything you wanted. Instead, you're teaching kids in a small shop and living in what I'm guessing is a very modest apartment. I smiled. And I'm happier than I've been in years. Michael shook his head in wonder. I don't understand. How can you be happy with so little when I'm miserable with so much? Because I have what matters, I explained. Purpose, community, the satisfaction of creating something with my hands and passing on knowledge to the next generation. Those things can't be bought. Michael was quiet for a moment, absorbing my words. Would you show me the shop? Tell me about what you're teaching these kids. I gave him a tour explaining each student's project, showing him the techniques I was passing on. As we talked, I could see a change in Michael's eyes, a spark of interest, a glimmer of the curious boy he had once been. Some of these kids remind me of you at that age, I told him, eager to learn, proud of what they can create. Michael ran his hand along the smooth edge of a table one of the older students was crafting. I've missed this, he said quietly. The smell of sawdust, the feeling of accomplishment when you create something tangible. My students began to filter back in from their lunch break, eyeing Michael curiously. Would it be okay if I stayed? He asked. Watched you teach? Of course, I said, unable to hide my surprise and pleasure. Michael sat on a stool in the corner as I resumed the class. At first he was just an observer, but when one of the younger boys struggled with a difficult joint, Michael stepped in to help. His hands remembered the skills I had taught him all those years ago. By the end of the class, Michael was fully engaged, moving from student to student, offering assistance and encouragement. The rich clothes and flashy watch seemed at odds with the sawdust that now covered him. But the smile on his face was more genuine than any I had seen in years. As the last student left, Michael turned to me. Dad, I want to make things right. I don't know how, but I want to try. It won't happen overnight, I cautioned. Trust takes time to rebuild. I know, he said, but I'd like to start today, if that's okay with you. We went to a small diner near the shop, the kind of place Michael would have sneered at 6 months ago. Over coffee and pie, we began the slow process of reconnection. Michael told me about the dark road he had traveled since winning the lottery, the false friends, the reckless spending, the growing emptiness inside. I've got half the money left, he said. I want to do something meaningful with it, something that would make you proud. It's your money, Michael. You need to do what feels right to you. He thought for a moment. What if we expanded your teaching program? Got a bigger space, more tools, reached more kids? I couldn't hide my surprise. You'd want to be involved in something like that. I would, he said with certainty. I've been chasing happiness in all the wrong places. Maybe it's time I looked where you found it, in creating and giving back. In the weeks that followed, Michael became a regular presence at the woodworking shop. He took a small apartment nearby, selling the luxury penthouse and most of his extravagant purchases. He established a foundation to fund woodworking programs for underserved youth with me as the director. We found an old warehouse space that we renovated together, turning it into a fully equipped woodworking school. Michael rediscovered his love for carpentry, working alongside me to build workbenches and storage units for the new facility. The process wasn't always smooth. There were moments of tension, old hurts that resurfaced and needed to be addressed. But with each project we completed together, each piece of wood we shaped with our hands, our relationship was also being reshaped and restored. One evening as we were finishing up work on the new school, Michael turned to me. "Dad, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." "What's that?" "The house you and Mum lived in when I was little, Saul. The one you had to sell after her medical bills. Do you remember the address?" The question caught me off guard. "Of course. 427 Maple Street. I could never forget it." Michael nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "Just checking." A week later, on my 69th birthday, Michael handed me a small wooden box, one he had crafted himself over the past month, in secret. Inside was a key and a deed to 427 Maple Street. "I bought it back," he said, watching my face anxiously. "Had it renovated to look just like it did when I was a kid. Even found furniture similar to what we had." I was speechless, tears filling my eyes as I held the key to the home where I had raised my son, where Sarah and I had been so happy. "Is this okay?" Michael asked nervously. "I thought maybe we could both live there. It's big enough for us each to have our own space, but we'd be together, like a family again." I pulled my son into an embrace, unable to find words to express what this gesture meant to me. It wasn't about the house itself or even the money it had cost. It was about Michael understanding finally what truly mattered. Family memories, connection. The greatest fortune in my life was never going to be found in a lottery ticket. It was in the son who had lost his way, but found it again in the skills passed down through generations, in the young lives we were now helping to shape together. The money that had nearly destroyed our relationship had become a tool for healing and growth. But the real wealth was in what couldn't be bought. Forgiveness, understanding, and the bond between a father and son that, though severely tested, had proven unbreakable. What experience have you had with family and money? Has wealth ever come between you and someone you love? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Remember, the real lottery in life is having people who stand by you, whether you're rich or poor. Thank you for listening, and may you always recognize the true wealth in your life.